only way he'll accept it. And if they can't tell him the dream, he doesn't believe they can tell him the interpretation either. And he's not wrong about that. So and its interpretation. So they answered a second time and said, they're whining, this isn't fair. Let the king tell the dream to his servants, and we will declare the interpretation. So the king replied, I know for certain you are bargaining for time, inasmuch as you have seen that the command for me is firm. If you do not make the dream known to me, there's only one decree for you. You have agreed together to speak lying and corrupt words before me until the situation is changed. Therefore, tell me the dream that I may know that you can declare to me its interpretation. And this really is smart on Nebuchadnezzar's part. I think it indicates he's at the point of God consciousness anyway. He's aware of how useless their demonism is. He's aware of how empty these guys really are, that they're liars, that they conspire together, that they try to, they flatter him and whatever else. He's not ignorant of that. So the Chaldeans answered the king and said, there's not a man on earth who could declare the matter for the king, inasmuch as no great king or ruler has ever asked anything like this of any magician, conjurer, or Chaldean. More whining, more complaining. No king before you ever asked of this. Your father Nabopolassar never demanded this, or the Assyrians never demanded this, or Pharaoh never demanded this. There's plenty of pagan kings all around the world that have magicians and conjurers and sorcerers, but no one ever asked them to read minds or to tell a dream that they didn't dream themselves. Only the gods can know this. No man can know this, is what they're saying. The thing which the king demands is difficult. There is no one else who could declare to the king except gods, whose dwelling place is not with mortal flesh. And they're actually not wrong about this. If you take the term Elohim, which is a plural noun, they're using it plurally, of course, to refer to gods. But Elohim does know the dream because Elohim sent this dream. And it's kind of an interesting testimony. All right, because of this, the king became indignant, very furious, gave orders to destroy all the wise men of Babylon. So now Daniel and his friends are in trouble. Because even though they weren't included in this consultation, they are included in the execution warrant. That they are part of the staff that is he's going to execute them all, right? Kind of like maybe America needs to do with a certain federal bureau, Just execute them all. Start over from scratch. What might I be talking about? I don't know. I'll continue. So the decree went forth that the wise men should be slain, and they looked for Daniel and his friends to kill them. Then Daniel replied with discretion and discernment. I stressed this last night when they were ordered to eat the king's food, and Daniel just made a gracious request and test us and see. And again, we see the discretion and discernment. If you're going to kill us, but can we ask why first? And might we have an opportunity to glorify God and serve in this way? And so he says to Arioch, the king's commander, for what reason is the decree from the king so urgent? Do you have to execute it right now? Can we have some time to provide what Nebuchadnezzar needs? So Daniel went in and requested the king that he would give him time in order that he might declare the interpretation to the king. And this too is a grace provision. Notice in verse 15, Arioch informed Daniel. Daniel went and requested of the king. So that, you talk about bravery. I mean, he just stands before Nebuchadnezzar and says, I'm under your death warrant, but I wasn't included in those earlier consultations, and if you give me time, I'll tell you your dream. And he finds favor in the eyes of Nebuchadnezzar, evidently. So he's given this request. So Daniel went to his house and informed the friends. They get a prayer meeting together, Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah. They might request compassion from the God of heaven concerning this mystery, so Daniel and his friends will not be destroyed with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. It's kind of curious. The other wise men, their lives get saved too in the process of Daniel saving his life and his friends' lives. So the mystery was revealed to Daniel in a night vision, and Daniel blessed the God of heaven. So, and prayers are answered. God is faithful. Daniel now knows the dream. His friends know the dream. They know what it is. They know the interpretation. And now they get to go and glorify God by testifying to Nebuchadnezzar. what is one of the most profound messages anywhere in the Bible. And it was an unbeliever, a pagan Gentile who received this dream, the contents of which we're still seeing played out today in our day and age. Okay? This is remarkable. All right. I'm not really reading off my notes here. I'm just taking it off my head. But yeah, the demonic powers could not read the king's mind and interpret his dream. Nebuchadnezzar's anger at the emptiness of Chaldean religion, which I think is a positive thing. I think it means that he could be approaching gospel hearing at a point of positive volition. If he's hostile to the paganism he grew up with, then maybe God's working on his heart. Who knows? Okay. So Daniel takes leadership for the faithful four and views the danger of physical death as an opportunity for the glory of the Lord, exercising discretion and discernment, calling an immediate prayer meeting, giving all praise to God for answered prayer. Then he redeems the opportunity to speak in the king's presence by giving the king an introduction to the God of heaven. He says, let me tell you about this God you do not know. Okay? Like the Apostle Paul in the Mars Hill sermon, that God is nearby and he's knowable. So, blessing the God of heaven. Let the name of God be blessed forever and ever, for wisdom and power belong to him. It is he who changes the times and the epochs. He removes kings and establishes kings. He gives wisdom to wise men and knowledge to men of understanding. Well, we claim this verse a lot. We understand he installs kings, he removes kings, he changes the times and the epochs. We understand it's the sovereignty of God that gives us the president we have and the Congress we have and the Supreme Court we have and everything else. It's God's grace. It is he who reveals profound and hidden things. He knows what is in the darkness, and the light dwells with him. To you, O God of my fathers, I give thanks and praise, for you have given me wisdom and power. Even now you have made known to me what we requested of you, for you have made known to us the king's matter. That's just a worship prayer right to God himself. Just a great big thank you. Praising the Lord God for all of his grace. All right. Are we still having audio issues, or am I streaming live? We're streaming live? All right. I'll be careful what I say about the federal government then. Therefore, Daniel went into Arioch, whom the king had appointed to destroy the wise men of Babylon, went in and spoke to him as follows: do not destroy the wise men of Babylon. Take me to the king's presence. I will declare the interpretation to the king. So Arioch hurriedly brought him in, spoke to him as follows: I have found a man among the exiles from Judah who can make the interpretation known to the king. So the king said to Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, are you able to make known to me the dream which I have seen and its interpretation? Remember, the wise men already said no human being can do this. But Daniel says he can. Daniel answered before the king and said, as for the mystery about which the king has inquired, neither wise men, conjurers, magicians, or diviners are able to declare it to the king. Those guys are all useless. However, there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries. So Daniel's not going to take credit for this. He's not going to praise himself. He's using this opportunity to introduce Nebuchadnezzar to God in heaven, to the Lord God of Israel. There is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries. He has made known to King Nebuchadnezzar what will take place in the latter days. This was your dream and the visions in your mind while on your bed. And then he proceeds to spell it out with such excruciating specificity. The nitty-gritty details. There's no way this is a lucky guess. There's no way that anyone could make this stuff up unless he knew. No one can make this up. God revealed what the dream was all about in every detail. All right, so it's a panorama of Gentile history is what this is. Daniel is going to correctly describe the king's dream as a vivid portrayal. It's a statue. A vividly portrayed statue, accurately interpreting the dream as a prophetic panorama of Gentile history. And that's what it is. It starts with Nebuchadnezzar himself, the head of gold. And it takes, this dream takes Nebuchadnezzar through all the future Gentile dominion over the Jewish people. From Babylon to Persia to Greece to Rome. And then the end of that Gentile dominion is when Jesus Christ comes and establishes the eschatological theocratic kingdom. And we're going to demonstrate that here tonight. All right. This time period is called the time of the Gentiles in Luke 21:24. So, here's your dream. While on your bed, your thoughts turn to what would take place in the future, and he who reveals mysteries has made known to you what will take place. But as for me, the mystery has not been revealed to me for any wisdom residing in me any more than any other living man, but for the purpose of making the interpretation known to the king, that you may understand the thoughts of your mind. In other words, he was given the capacity to interpret, but the message isn't even for him. The message is for Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar is the recipient of this divine revelation. You, O king, were looking, and behold, there was a single great statue which was large and of extraordinary splendor, was standing in front of you. Its appearance was awesome. The head of the statue is made of fine gold, its breast and arms of silver, its belly and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of clay. Well, that's pretty specific, right? Are we good so far? You know, you got to imagine the chill that's got to be going down Nebuchadnezzar's spine right now, because this is what he dreamed from head to toe. And he's not done there. You continued looking until a stone was cut out without hands, and it struck the statue on its feet of iron and clay and crushed them. So the dream was more than just a statue. The statue was observed from head to toe in fine detail, and a metallic inspection or a material inspection of the statue from head to toe. And then the action when this stone is cut out without hands, all of a sudden a stone without hands was cut out, and it comes crashing to the earth and crushed the feet of iron and clay. Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, the gold were crushed all at the same time and became like chaff from the summer threshing floors, and the wind carried them away so that not a trace of them was found. All the material components were gone with the wind. But the stone that struck the statue became a great mountain and filled the earth. Okay? Isn't that beautiful? I'm looking forward to that. Now, this was the dream. Now we will tell its interpretation before the king. We will tell the interpretation before the king. Is this Daniel and his friends? Is this Daniel and the Lord? Is this, you got a mouse in your pocket? Who's we? I think it's Daniel and his friends. They prayed about it together. They're standing there together. We will tell its interpretation before the king. You, O king. And by the way, the blessing we have, this is so simple. People make it complicated. They make Revelation complicated. They make any apocalyptic genre complicated by trying to be smarter than God, by trying to outsmart the Scriptures. Don't do that, okay? Don't be all, this is why, these geniuses, they write all these books and they make all this money. You don't have to do that. Don't sit there and say, ooh, I've had this prophetic insight. I can tell you what this is. You don't have to do that. Just read a few verses down and God will tell you what the head of gold represents, what the chest of silver represents, what the belly and thighs of bronze represent. You don't have to prove to anybody you're a genius. You just have to read what it says and go, oh, okay, there it is. Simple. You, O king, are the King of kings, to whom the God of heaven has given the kingdom of power, strength, and glory. And wherever the sons of men dwell, or the beasts of the field, or the birds of the sky, he has given them into your hand and has caused you to rule over them all. You are the head of gold. Okay, I'm going to go with that. After you there will arise another kingdom inferior to you. Now we start to realize that it's not just Nebuchadnezzar personally, but Nebuchadnezzar, as he represents the kingdom of which he's the king, the head of gold is Babylon. And then after Babylon comes Persia. After you will arise another kingdom inferior to you. Then a third kingdom of bronze, which will rule over all the earth. So from the gold to the silver to the bronze, we've got 3 successive kingdoms. Babylon, Persia, Greece. Gold, silver, bronze. So it's a first kingdom, a second kingdom, a third kingdom. There's no gaps. It's very sequential. We've got to be clear on this. Then there will be a fourth kingdom, as strong as iron. Inasmuch as iron crushes and shatters all things, so like iron that breaks in pieces, it will crush and break all these in pieces. So the dream of Nebuchadnezzar is gold, silver, bronze, and iron. It is Babylon, Persia, Greece, and Rome. 4 sequential empires, one that conquers, the other conquers, the other conquers, the other, in sequence. Okay? But it's the fourth one that's different. It's the fourth one that has an injection. It's the fourth one that doesn't get conquered until Jesus returns in the eschatological kingdom. So if it doesn't get conquered, what happens to it? According to this dream. Okay? And stick with me on this. We're reading the prophecy. We're not reading Western civilization. We're not reading medieval history or ancient history or any of that. Don't get way ahead of me, smarty pants. I know. Okay? The Western Empire fell in 476 and the Eastern Empire in 1453. And we're not going there. We're sticking with this dream. Okay? Babylon, Persia, Greece, and Rome. This fourth kingdom. In that you saw the feet and toes, partly of potter's clay and partly of iron. This is where it gets different. Remember, when silver replaced gold, there wasn't any mixture of gold and silver. It was a conquering empire, and it replaced. Same thing when bronze replaces silver. There's not a blending of bronze and silver. It's a conquering empire, and it's replaced. When iron came in, it didn't mingle with the bronze, and it replaced the bronze. So Babylon was replaced by Persia. Persia was replaced by Greece. Greece was replaced by Rome. Rome was not replaced. There was not a fifth kingdom. There's only 4. But there is a material adjustment to that fourth kingdom. Can we say that? There is a material alteration to that fourth kingdom. Not a replacement. There's only 4. By the way, I'm going to teach this again when we get to chapter 7. Because we have in chapter 7 beasts instead of statue. And we're going to have a lion and a bear and a leopard, a 4-headed leopard, and then we're going to have a beast. And again, there's only 4. There's not a 5th, there's not a 6th, I don't want to hear about how Islam conquered Constantinople. I don't want to hear about anything after Rome. I don't want to hear about the Holy Roman Empire or the British Empire or the American Empire or anything else. Babylon, Persia, Greece, and Rome. And how is it that Rome is still here? How is it that Rome is waiting for the stone to come out of heaven and smash its feet and set up the eschatological theocratic kingdom of the Lord, what we call the millennium and the eternal kingdom? All right? With me so far? In that you saw the feet and toes, partly of potter's clay and partly of iron. It will be a divided kingdom. So it's not conquered and replaced, it is divided. But it will have in it the toughness of iron, inasmuch as you saw the iron mixed with common clay. So the culture that descends from this mixture still has all the toughness that Rome ever had, because it still maintains the legacy of iron. But it also has the legacy of clay. As the toes of the feet were partly of iron and partly of pottery, so some of the kingdom will be strong and part of it will be brittle. And you end up with a culture that at times is the strongest thing this planet has ever seen, and at times it's the most crumbling, pathetic thing this planet has ever seen, in a very schizophrenic kind of way. And in that you saw the iron mixed with common clay. Notice, we got 3 comprehensive verses here to talk about iron and clay, feet and toes, right? When we had one kingdom, a second kingdom, a third kingdom, a fourth kingdom, they barely got 1 verse each. But this iron and clay mixture gets 3 full verses describing this. In that you saw the iron mixed with common clay, they will combine with one another. Notice, in the seed of men. So this progression, it is linear. As you move down the statue, you're moving forward through time. And we move past the Babylonian era, past the Persian era, past the Greek era, past the Roman era. And then we get to the post-Roman era, where it's no longer just iron, but we have the material adjustment to that fourth kingdom. And the material adjustment is an infusion of a foreign substance, an infusion of a foreign material element. It's not metallic. It's not gold, silver, bronze, or iron. It's clay. All right? And with the infusion of this culture, you end up with a division. You end up with confusion, division. And in this attempted mixture, again, we're moving forward through time. It combines iron mixed with clay, combining with one another in the seed of men. So we're talking about birth, we're talking about generations, we're talking about descendants. The people groups that today are the descended people groups of the iron and clay forefathers. To me, it's critical. This seed of men is one of the most important phrases anywhere in this chapter. But they will not adhere to one another, even as iron does not combine with pottery. The material culture, the worldview of these cultures, there's a problem with the adhesion. The clay and the iron just are not going to form a new alloy. They're not going to form a new substance. They'll try. They'll keep trying. Ever since the fall of Rome has been the dream of reviving Rome. And every time they try, it crumbles again. It crumbles again. Now, in the days of those kings, by the time what are those kings? Well, that's the toes that were mentioned. In the days of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom which will never be destroyed. And that kingdom will not be left for another people. It will crush and put an end to all these kingdoms, but it will itself endure forever. And inasmuch as you saw that a stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, that it crushed the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and the gold, the great God has made known to the king that what will take place in the future, so that the dream is true and the interpretation is trustworthy. So, boom. Nebuchadnezzar fell on his face, did homage to Daniel, gave orders to present to him an offering and a fragrant incense. I mean, he nailed it. He described the dream and he gives the interpretation, and Nebuchadnezzar is absolutely overwhelmed. Surely your God is a God of gods and a Lord of kings and a revealer of mysteries, since you have been able to reveal this mystery. I actually don't think he's getting saved at this point. I think he's approaching that. But then he's going to set up a statue of his own and demand worship. I think it's the next chapter where he gets saved. But this is an element. This is planting seeds that is leading to his salvation. He's still a pagan. He still believes there are multiple gods out there. But man, Daniel's God is awesome. He's a bigger God than any other God he knows about. So the king promoted Daniel, gave him many great gifts, made him ruler over the whole province of Babylon and chief prefect over all the wise men of Babylon. And Daniel made request of the king that he appointed Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the administration of the province of Babylon while Daniel was at the king's court. And so, man, what an amazing chapter. All right. Now, we got to explain this a little bit deeper, okay? And you're getting the fast version on this, because this could take hours and hours and weeks. But in the notes now, let's just kind of recap what we have here. The first three kingdoms are easy, right? Babylon, Persia, Greece. Even when we get to the start of Rome, that's all easy, because we can understand invasion and conquering, invasion and conquering, invasion and conquering. There's no question the Babylonians were defeated by the Persians. There's no question the Persians were defeated by the Greeks. There's no question the Greeks were defeated by the Romans. But that's where we have to stop this mindset, okay? Because what follows is not a defeat. It is an injection of an alien culture It is an injection of a non-Roman material culture that attempts to join, that attempts to become a part of. Remember, when the Germanic barbarians were coming across the frontier, they weren't trying to overthrow Rome. They were trying to join Rome. They were attempting to become part of the Roman Empire. And in the final century or two, the bulk of the legions were Germanic, which is interesting. They were coming to join. They were not coming to overthrow. A lot of the Gothic tribes were running from Huns and other groups that were coming behind them, and they had a lot of other issues there too. Anyway, so the head of gold. Let me read from the notes here. I realize we still got to do chapter 3. We still got to do Jeremiah chapter 7. I'll try to keep you here. We'll be gone before midnight, I think. Daniel is correctly describing the dream so vividly, and he's accurately recording prophecy as far as Gentile history. And it starts with Nebuchadnezzar because that's when the Davidic throne was vacated. Nebuchadnezzar was the Gentile that ended the Davidic throne, or at least paused it, right? He had Zedekiah taken in captivity, gouged his eyes out. He destroyed the temple. There's no question that Gentile dominion over the Jewish people started with Nebuchadnezzar. And then it's going to go from Babylon, Persia, Greece, and Rome, and then it's going to stop when Jesus Christ comes and sets up the eschatological kingdom. And then the Jews will never be dominated by Gentiles ever again. So this dream is the dream of Gentile dominion over the Jewish people with the vacated Davidic throne. Ooh, I got to say that again. This statue is a vision of Gentile dominion over the Jewish people with a vacated Davidic throne. So it starts with Nebuchadnezzar and it ends with Jesus Christ in the millennial kingdom. Isn't this beautiful? Now, the head of gold is King Nebuchadnezzar in the empire of Babylon. The breast and arms of silver represents a kingdom subsequent to and inferior to Babylon. Historically, this is the Medo-Persian Empire. The belly and thighs of bronze represent a kingdom subsequent to the others, but one that rules over the whole earth. It actually has the largest geography of the three so far. Historically, this was the Greek Empire, the conquest of Alexander. We'll get more details on this in chapter 7, where it gets divided up into 4 parts, but that'll wait till chapter 7. The legs of iron represent a fourth kingdom, subsequent to and crushing the first 3. Historically, this was the Roman Empire. Now, the feet of iron and clay represent a divided condition. Okay, not a conquest, not an invasion, not an empire that conquers and replaces. Okay, because it's got this mixture of iron and clay. That's different than anything else in this chapter. The feet of iron and clay represent a divided condition, subsequent to but developed out of the fourth kingdom. So subsequent to the Roman Empire, but developed out of the Roman Empire. So we're talking about a descended culture, a legacy, a heritage of Rome and a heritage of a Latin Germanic heritage is what we're talking about. The toes of iron and clay represent a fragmented and mixed state of affairs, the legacy of that fourth kingdom. And in fact, it's going to be a confederation of 10 kings, and we'll get more of that when we get to chapter 7, and we see horns on the beast that represent 10 simultaneously ruling kings. Although the fourth empire fell, its heritage continues to the present day. The heritage of Rome continues. The gold was replaced by silver. The silver was replaced by bronze. The bronze was replaced by iron. However, the iron was not replaced. It wasn't feet of clay, it was feet of iron mixed with clay. The clay was injected into the iron, mixed and bonded with it to transform the Fourth Empire into something else altogether. The Latin and Germanic elements formed the new cultures and societies of medieval Europe. That is, the Latin and the Germanic elements, the iron and clay elements, formed the new cultures and societies of medieval Europe. The seed of men, nature of these toes, indicates a physical descent from the iron and clay cultures is fulfilled in the present condition of Western civilization. Western Europe, the United States, Australia, New Zealand, anywhere that you have a population group, an ethnicity, a people group that is the blending of Latin and Germanic elements, such as the Romance languages, for example, such as the whole mindset of Western civilization, including the recognition of universal law, the dream and ideal of Roman law, and the representative elements of Germanic democracy or representative traditions. Anyway, I should have written it down. There's the birth of medieval Europe. I got several authors I can recommend for you guys to show what happened after Rome fell and how the Middle Ages developed what today we would call Western civilization. God will bring the Gentile dominion of the Jewish people to an end when he establishes his mountain, that is his kingdom, on the earth in the eschatological theocratic kingdom of the Lord. There's no question. This dream does not describe the Muslims at Constantinople. This dream does not describe anything in these recent centuries until you get to the toes. And in the future, we're going to see it's Jesus Christ that brings the toes to an end. Western civilization, the Western world as we know it today. So the chapter closes by describing the promotion of Daniel and his faithful friends. All right. Well, I know there's going to be about 100 questions on this, but we'll save those for next week. Or shoot me an email or talk to me after class. I've got to get on to Daniel 3 and Jeremiah 7. Although he was awed by the power and wisdom of Daniel's God, Nebuchadnezzar is not yet saved and erects his own golden image for the empire to worship. I think this whole statue dream just got to him, and he decided, okay, if I'm the head of gold, then let's make a golden statue, and let's have my people start to bow down and worship, right? Great is me, great things have I done. Bow down and worship me. And so he makes an image of gold, the height of which was 60 cubits. It's a 90-foot high statue. That's unbelievable. Its width was 6 cubits. He set up on the plain of Dur in the province of Babylon. He sends word to assemble the satraps, prefects, governors, counselors, treasurers, judges, magistrates. So I gave these guys a name too. In chapter 2, it was the Supernatural Advisory Board. This is the political establishment. Okay? And ordering that they all have to appear, they all have to attend the dedication, and they have to bow down and worship. So the satraps, the prefects, the governors, the counselors, the treasurers, the judges, the magistrates, all the rulers of the provinces were assembled in the dedication of the image. You know what? I kind of suspect that maybe Zedekiah was here as well, as a tribute king, as a subject, the king of Judah, that had to come and pay his homage, pay his tribute. And the herald loudly proclaimed, "To you the command is given, O peoples, nations, and men of every language. At the moment you hear the sound of the horn, flute, lyre, trigon, psaltery, bagpipe, and all kinds of music." Interesting how these pagan religions have the best music programs out there, don't you think? "Fall down and worship me. But whoever does not fall down and worship shall be cast into the midst of the furnace of blazing fire." So at that time, when the peoples heard the sound of the horn, flute, lyre, trigon, psaltery, bagpipe, and all kinds of music, all the peoples, nations, and men of every language fell down and worshipped the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. And this is a tremendous blasphemy, because according to the dream that he just had, this kind of global worship is not supposed to happen until the King of Kings and Lord of Lords arrives. Then when Jesus Christ comes and establishes his throne, then the men of every tribe, tongue, people, and nation can worship him and bow down. But not Nebuchadnezzar, not this pagan human. Anyway, then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego get ratted out here. Certain Chaldeans come forward and they bring charges against the Jews. They say, they're not bowing down and worshiping you. And by name, they highlight Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Now, why is Daniel not highlighted? We're not told. He's not mentioned in this passage. Most likely, he was not present. If he had duties to represent Nebuchadnezzar, perhaps he was elsewhere. He could have been in Susa. He could have been to the east. He could have been on the king's business at this time. We don't know why Daniel's missing out of this chapter, but We just continue on with what we do know. So Nebuchadnezzar, in a rage and anger, gave orders to bring Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego in, gives them a chance. And I love their response. They say, we don't need to give you an answer. Isn't that great? Now, they're still subject. They're still subject to the governing authorities, but they're not obedient. Understand the difference between being subject and being obedient. They are subject, and they will submit to the fiery furnace. But they are not obedient. They're not worshiping the statue, and they're not giving the explanation. And I love the way they say, if it be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us. He can rescue us. He can save us. But even if he does not, I love that. But if not, we're not going to serve you. We're going to bow down and worship God only. He is able to deliver us. He will deliver us. But even if he does not, let it be known to you, O king, we are not going to serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up. I love that. This is beautiful. He can save us. He will save us. But even if he does not. So Nebuchadnezzar is filled with wrath. His facial expression was altered toward Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. I hope this is on video. I'm going to see the replay on this. And he answered by giving orders to heat the furnace 7 times more than it was usually heated. I mean, now they can be extra dead. I mean, if the furnace kills people, what's the difference if it's heated 7 times or more? Anyway. And then they're tied up in their trousers, their coats, their caps, and other clothes, cast into the midst of the furnace of blazing fire. And because the king's command was urgent, the furnace had been made extremely hot, the flame of the fire slew those men who carried up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. The guards that carried them down and threw them in, they were overwhelmed by the heat, by the flames, by the smoke inhalation, whatever it was. They died throwing them into the fire. And then Nebuchadnezzar the king was astounded and stood up in haste, said to his high. And what's interesting, because when he looks in and he sees this 4th man, Nebuchadnezzar was astounded and stood up in haste and said to his high officials, was it not 3 that we cast in? Certainly, O king. Well, look, I see 4 men loosed and walking around in the midst of the fire without harm. And the appearance of the 4th is like either a son of the gods or the Son of God. Again, Elohim is plural. He doesn't know that. He's about to find out that the plural Elohim refers to the one God. Nebuchadnezzar came near to the door of the furnace of blazing fire, responded and said, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, come out, you servants of the Most High God. See, he knows more than we know that he knows more than we recognize just by reading these verses. Where did he get the name El Elyon? Where did he get the name Most High God? I think there's been other witnessing opportunities prior to this night. I think that Daniel testified to the Most High God. Daniel testified when he interpreted the dream in chapter 2. Servants of the Most High God, come here. And Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out in the midst of the fire. Now, interesting, they're still subject, and now they're obedient. They came when they were summoned. And the satraps and the prefects, the governors, the king's high officials gathered around, and they saw. Well, what a witness. Every provincial ruler is testifying to this day. The fire had no effect on their bodies. The hair wasn't even singed. Their trousers weren't damaged. They didn't even smell smoky. How awesome is that? They could at least smell smoky. No, they don't even smell smoky. This is an amazing miracle. So Nebuchadnezzar responded and said, Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, and who has sent his angel and delivered his servants and put their trust in him, violating the king's command, yet yielding up their bodies so as to not worship or serve any god except their own God. So when is it okay to defy secular authority? When you're obeying God. Okay? You're still subject even when you disobey, which means you could be thrown into the fiery furnace, or you could be tossed into the lion's den, or whatever else happens. You remain in subjection even when you disobey, as you worship God and God alone. So I make a decree that any people, nation, or tongue that speaks anything offensive against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be torn limb from limb, and their houses reduced to a rubbish heap, inasmuch as there is no other God who is able to deliver in this way. He just decrees that blasphemy against Yahweh is punishable by death. How awesome is that? And the king caused Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to prosper in the province of Babylon. I believe this is his saving moment. Not chapter 2, but the end of chapter 3. That he is now regenerate. He is now born again by faith. He understands this is the one true God of the universe. And on this basis then, he's going to compose a hymn in verses 1 through 3 here, which in the original Aramaic is actually verses 31 through 33. So the chapter division is off a little bit between the Aramaic and the English. In the English Bible, it stops with verse 30. In the Aramaic, it continues to verse 31, 32, and 33. So we'll go ahead and read those. Nebuchadnezzar the king, to all the peoples, nations, and men of every language that live in all the earth, may your peace abound. It seemed good to me to declare the signs and wonders which El Elyon, the Most High God, has done for me. And then he composes a psalm. Look at this. How great are his signs, how mighty are his wonders. His kingdom is an everlasting kingdom. His dominion is from generation to generation. This is a beautiful psalm with divine viewpoint, with absolute truth, and I believe it reflects his newfound status as a born-again believer. And he's now a part of that everlasting kingdom. How glorious is that going to be? When the stone cut without hands comes crashing down and Jesus establishes the millennial kingdom, and Nebuchadnezzar is personally resurrected to stand and take part in the millennial glory of Jesus Christ. That's amazing. All right. Well, we're going to get Jeremiah chapter 7 in 5 minutes. I took too long taking us through Daniel chapter 2, but that's all right. Also, I need to change that. I meant to fix that earlier. Jeremiah's second primary message is to be delivered at the entrance to the temple. The chronology is not exactly clear in Jeremiah, and I think I need to fix that. And he's had many messages prior to this one. This is not his second primary message. Anyway, I gave you a chart the other day that has the order and the sequence on Jeremiah. But this is a message that he's giving at the temple. Stand at the gate of the Lord's house and proclaim there this word and say, hear the word of the Lord, all you Judah, who enter by these gates to worship the Lord. Thus says the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, amend your ways and your deeds, and I will let you dwell in this place. Do not trust in deceptive words, saying, this is the temple of the Lord, and the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord. Like redundancy and repetition counts for something, right? If you truly amend your ways and your deeds, if you truly practice justice between a man and his neighbor, if you do not oppress the alien, the orphan, or the widow, and do not shed innocent blood in this place, nor walk after other gods to your own ruin, then I will let you dwell in this place, in the land that I gave to your fathers forever and ever. Behold, you are trusting in deceptive words to no avail. Will you steal, murder, and commit adultery, and swear falsely, and offer sacrifices to Baal, and walk after other gods that you have not known? Then come and stand before me in this house, which is called by my name, and say, we are delivered, that you may do all these abominations. Yeah, treating the temple as if it's, you're playing tag on the schoolyard, and this is base. You're safe. Just cling to the temple, and God won't. No, what is this? You can't be an idolater and then cling to God for safety. Has this house, which is called by my name, become a den of robbers in your sight? Behold, I, even I, have seen it, declares the Lord. Of course, Jesus has a quotation of this. Anyway, this is the message. Judah must immediately amend her ways and her deeds. And you got the notes there. I'm just going to have to leave you with this to read through this. The Lord prohibits Jeremiah from becoming an intercessor. This is significant. When you do read this, he says, as for you, verse 16, do not pray for this people. Wow. God tells his prophet to stop praying for Judah. That's something. Prohibiting him from being an intercessor on Jerusalem's behalf. The Lord continued his discourse to Judah, telling them that they've missed the entire point of the animal sacrifices. Yeah, verses 21 through 26. you're missing out. It's not just the ritual. You got to have the reality. You can't have this evil heart and think you're going to get away with it just because you're killing animals. God's not impressed with the ritual. Then verses 27 through 34, the Lord warns Jeremiah that his message is going to be ignored. You can speak all these words to them, they will not listen. You shall call to them, but they will not answer you. You shall say to them, this is the nation that did not obey the voice of the Lord their God or accept correction. Truth has perished and has been cut off from their mouth. So cut off your hair and cast it away, and take up a lamentation on the bare heights. For the Lord has rejected and forsaken the generation of his wrath. Remember, God deals with us on a generational basis. And Jeremiah is there called the generation of his wrath when he destroys Jerusalem and he ends his temple and he vacates the throne of David. How horrible is this? And not only in the present, but another days are coming message. The judgment of this passage looks ahead both to Nebuchadnezzar's destruction and to the day of the Lord. Yeah, you got a parallel with verses 32 through 34 there. When you look forward to Revelation 19, verses 17 and 18, all of the dead bodies, all of the feasting that takes place, the blood that rises to the horses' bridles, and all of this. The dead bodies of this people will be food for the birds of the sky and the beasts of the earth. No one will frighten them away. At that time, declares the Lord, they will bring out the bones of the kings of Judah and the bones of his princes and the bones of the priests and the bones of the prophets and the bones of the inhabitants from their graves. Well, what good is that going to do? And they will spread them out to the sun, the moon, and the host of heaven, which they have loved and which they have served and which they have gone after, which they have sought and which they have worshipped. They will not be gathered or buried. They will be as dung on the face of the ground. And death will be chosen rather than life by all the remnant that remains of this evil family that remains in all the places to which I have driven them, declares the Lord of hosts. Well, guess what? You dug up all those bones. You have this ultimate defiance, choosing death rather than life. But you know what's going to happen? The living God is going to return and those bones will live. David will be resurrected. Solomon will be resurrected. All the believing Israel will be resurrected for the millennial kingdom. All right, well, that's way too fast, but read through those notes as you read through the chapter. You'll do all right with it. We'll come back tomorrow night for day 225. Day 225, we'll pick up right there in Jeremiah 8, and we'll do Jeremiah 8, 9, 10, and 11. Lord willing and rapture pending. Father, I thank you for tonight. I thank you for your truth. I thank you for your marvelous plan, which has never yet been thwarted, never will be thwarted. You are on schedule. And Father, we are right now in the feet of clay and iron. We've been in the feet of clay and iron for a long, long time, Father. But that's in your wisdom as well. Waiting for toes to appear. Waiting for a 10-nation confederacy. The legacy nations, the legacy culture of Latin and Germanic people groups. And Father, in the end times, that 10-nation confederacy is going to be led by a despicable person. He's going to uproot 3 of those horns as he himself takes control. And Father, these days are fast coming upon us. So I thank you for being faithful. Thank you for guiding our study. Thank you for keeping us safe and secure in Christ. We thank you, Father, and we praise you in Jesus Christ's name. Amen. All righty, keep your armor on, walk in the light. We will see you.
Austin Bible Church is a grace ministry. No price is ever assigned to any video, audio, printed material, or anything provided by this ministry. Costs associated with such grace provision are paid in full by grace-oriented born-again believers in Jesus Christ, motivated by God the Holy Spirit, well-pleasing to God the Father. More information on our grace-giving policy and your opportunity to join in this grace financial fellowship can be found at the link in the description below.